when it comes to storyline missions, I still prefer safety over having a fast clear time, and I usually recommend players to run storylines with frigates, with cruisers, or even battlecruisers. Basically, fast and agile ships that are very difficult to catch. Now, when it comes to battleships, there are a couple battleships that offer a similar safety, although it is a little bit controversial because one of these ships is very expensive, and if this ship gets scanned in low sec, there's a big chance that a whole alliance will form a fleet just to get a piece of this thing. Now, the Barghest has been buffed in the November balance patch. The damage application on this thing has been improved. The damage application is very similar to the Typhoon 2. However, the Typhoon 2 still has, I would say, better damage application, but it has lower alpha damage. So the Barghest did become a bit better than before the balance patch, but the rest of the stats are the same. The module layout is also the same. The Barghest is a shield tank. I haven't seen a armor tank Barghest yet, and I honestly hope that I don't see a armor tank Barghest, because that's not a good idea. The Mordo ships are primarily shield tanks, so don't armor tank them. They're already paper ships, so you want to get maximum possible hit points out of these ships. Now let me show you the build. So the Typhoon 2 runs really well with basically all weapon systems. However, with the Typhoon 2 I prefer to run rapid missile launchers because of its phenomenal range and excellent damage application. However, you can also use the cruise missiles. On the Barghest, I like the range on the large missiles, and in storyline missions you don't want to be close to zero, or in the case of this ship, you don't want to be within the warp range of any potential pirate that might be in the system. Now, as for the implant, well, obviously you can use the warhead charge. As for the general units, I will quickly do a good layout. Now you can go with extra range or extra DPS or extra tank, depends on what type of Barghest you fly. However, in storyline missions in low sec, I would still go with a tanky build, but you can technically make this ship a very long range kite. I'm talking about 300 kilometer optimal range with the missiles. That offers amazing safety, and at that distance you are not going to get tackled by anything. But with this ship, I think I will show you the DPS build. The ship will still have a very good range, and I will show you some tricks that you can use to be able to avoid Stratios tackle ships, bomber tackles, and things like that, because being able to avoid them is key to victory, and that way you can ensure survival. Okay, I think the units are already set up very nicely. Let me just quickly scroll down to check something out. You can use basically any combination you like. You can go for maximum range for maximum safety, or you can sacrifice a bit of range for a bit more DPS. Depends on, I guess, on your ship. In my case, I will go with DPS because the range is already pretty good. Or you can even go with maximum possible damage application. I forgot about that one. Now, as for the low slot modules, like I mentioned before, you can go with a tank build, and honestly, I would probably go with something like this, because the Barghest is already very paper, so you want to at least make the ship survive couple hits, although Mordo ships are not known to be tanks, so range is probably going to be the thing that's going to keep this ship alive. And speaking of range, you can slap two of the missile guidance computers. They should increase the range and missile damage application, or if you use the general units, you can focus on range or damage application. Again, both work really well. With this setup, 200-kilometer missile range, the application is very nice. You can also slap two of them, or a combination between a guidance computer and a ballistic control. Again, that also works really well if you have the general units for the ballistic control and for the missile guidance computer. Then you can use the ballistic plus guidance computer combination, because that way you get the best of both sides. As for the nanocore, well, not really required to use a nanocore. I personally don't use nanocores on most of my ships nowadays, but I have the CyberX nanocore because it looks awesome on the spacepan. It can offer some very nice screenshots later on. And the mission that I will run, Friends by Blood. What a lovely name. 250 million ISK reward. It has 3 combat sites, and by the looks of it, one non-combat part, I guess. And with that being said, time to undock, and I will quick travel to the mission location so that we don't have to sit for 80 minutes looking at the ship warping up and down. Now, the missile implant is one of my favorites because it's so fun to use. One of the most fun to use implants in the game. My missile combination is explosive and thermal. I usually run thermal for shields, explosive for armor and hulls. Against frigates you can use explosive because it just wrecks them. And you can also combine the explosive missiles or thermal missiles with the precision mode, which will improve the damage application quite a bit. And it does slap ships very efficiently. It also does slap pirates that try to tackle this ship. Remember, a micro updrive increases your signature radius. The missiles on this thing go 19 kilometers per second. So a ship that's approaching you, and if you have the implant, and let's say you have the general units for reduced explosion radius, and you have increased explosion velocity. Let's say you have a maximum possible damage application built on the spacepan. Anything that's like a cruiser, frigate, interceptor that's trying to engage you is going to get yeeted off grid so quickly they will not be aware that they are dead until they realize that their pod can't lock on the spacepan. Now, I haven't had a chance to engage a spacepan with a cruiser or frigate. I've killed 2 of these ships with the Macariel, although both spacepans that I've killed had terrible builds, so not really what I would call a fair comparison, but yeah, that's my experience with the spacepans. Still quite shocked that such expensive ships had such bad builds, but I had a chance to experience a maximum possible damage application built on a Typhoon 2 on my Ortus, and I probably talked about this multiple times by now, but that Typhoon 2 almost yeeted my Ortus off grid in one hit from 150 kilometers. So yeah, and they used the large cruise missiles. So a maximum possible damage application build for low sec is actually a pretty good idea because it offers fantastic protection. Now, speaking of protection, what can you do to avoid being tackled or stalked inside of a mission? Now, unfortunately, I see a lot of battleship pilots just sit at 0 in low sec or sit at 100, not even aligned. And well, obviously they are sitting ducks, they're easy kills. But if the ship is moving, and if you are moving in such a way that there is no clear warping to your ship, then the pirates can't really approach your ship. That's why when you go to the mission, immediately start to move towards a point where there is basically no clear warp into, and you can align yourself towards an object. I would say align to a gate or station. Don't align to planets or the star, because they can actually catch you on a planet or star, but they can't catch you on a station or gate. Now, if you're constantly moving and if there is no clear warp in, then there is almost a 0% chance for you to get tackled. The only thing that can mess up your day is bad internet. If you glitch out, if the internet goes out, and if your ship just sits there, they can use the double warp trick and they can get to the Barghest very easily. So that's basically the only thing that can mess up your day, but that happens rarely. So I would not be too much worried about that. I mean, I have one of the worst internet connections out of all players, and it rarely happens to me.
Warp
so
drive active.
I guess that's one comforting factor. But constantly moving, and being in a position that's basically impossible to reach to, is one way to stay alive inside of the storyline missions. Now this is the non-combat part. That was the first wave. The first wave of this mission is actually very easy.
Request accepted.
Was very fast as well. Now I'll quickly go and do the thing over here, and then I can unlock and continue with the combat part.
Autopilot engaged.
The one thing that's killing most players in low-sec is the fact that they have absolutely no defense, and they put no effort to be hard to catch. That's what I've noticed after blasting thousands of ships in low-sec. Most of them die the same way. Now you might ask, well, if that's the case, why do you say that cruisers or frigates are the best option? Well, for cruisers and frigates, being idle, basically sitting still, is death, even to the NPC ships in the storyline mission. So most cruiser pilots, most frigate pilots are constantly moving, and if someone tries to warp in, by the time the pirate warps in, the cruiser or frigate is already warping out. So by default they are much more difficult to catch. And of course they have a good fighting chance against the pirates. After all, no one is going to dump like 5 Macarials on a Phantasm. Speaking of which, the Phantasm is one of the best, if not the best cruiser, one of the best cruisers, if not the best cruiser for storyline missions. Its bonus on afterburners allows it to be very fast even when webbed, so you can easily slip out of the pirate webs, and you don't have to worry about scramblers turning off your mic warp drift, because the afterburner is not going to be affected by that. But the Phantasm is definitely one of the best, if not the best, ships for storyline missions. It is so difficult to tackle these ships, and trust me, I tackled a lot of ships. Usually pirates use a bomber tackle or a Stratios tackle. In some rare cases they will use a Astero tackle, but that's rare. A bomber tackle can easily be avoided by doing a manual orbit. Same can be said about a Stratios, because those ships, especially the Stratios, it's not really fast. The Stratios is the slowest cruiser in the game, so having to chase something that's going 2.2 kilometers per second with 220 meters per second is not a easy task. In that situation, the pirate will usually go for the double warp trick, or they will try to intercept. But if you maintain a manual orbit, manual orbiting is basically the best thing that you can do with ships that have extremely long range with their weapons, then the Stratios can only watch and they can't really do anything to the mission runner. And again, I'm talking from my personal experience. I had couple of ships that were in a very weird position. There was no warping and they were constantly moving. So I did try the double warp trick. I did warp to the last known position of the ship, but I was still 50 kilometers away from them and they were constantly moving and accelerating, so I basically had no chance to catch that ship. So that's the trick that you should use if you are running missions in low sec. It might sound complicated, it might sound very difficult, but it's really not. And with a bit of practice, you will be doing the manual piloting without even noticing. So that's one way how to survive through the current pirate systems. Now, most pirates are located in Galante space. That's what I noticed. And, well, surprisingly, I also live in Galante space. So there's a chance that Amar space is a little bit more chill. I mean, I'm probably wrong. That's okay if I'm wrong. But it does feel like Amar space is a little bit more chill with the pirates than Galante space. Galante space is loaded with them. And again, speaking from my personal experience. So running missions in Amar space might be a little bit easier. Again, that's a big if it doesn't have a lot of pirates running around in Amar space. Now, not really sure about Mimatar space. I remember back when I was roaming with the Cinnabal, Mimatar space used to be quite chill. Now I say used to be chill because there's a chance that things have changed. Caldari space is quite similar to Galante space. You will encounter lots of pirates, but Galante space definitely has the most bloodthirsty pilots and pirates in the game. Not really sure how that happened. Might also explain why everyone is using 1,000 stabs in Galante space. Haven't been in Amar space in a very long time. Perhaps I should go and pay a visit just to see the situation of that place. Now here you will notice couple things. The explosive missiles don't do a lot of damage on the shield. Basically, it takes me 2 cycles to go through the shield of a battleship, but with the thermal missiles, it takes basically 1 hit to delete the shield of a battleship. So if you want to maximize the clear time, you will have to switch between thermal and explosive missiles on every target. Now against smaller targets it won't really matter because the space pen, as you can see here, it has already a lot of alpha damage and it does slap really hard. Mordor ships are known to have the highest paper DPS out of all missile ships. And this was the second phase. Now each phase has like 4 waves. I believe the
Autopilot engaged.
last part has like 5 waves. We will find out. But so far, no issues with the tank, no issues with the capacitor, No issues with the DPS output. The space pen does run this very smoothly. Now at first I thought that the battleships will have enough range to hit me from this distance, but it turns out they can't, which is a good thing because I have no tank. Now again, I'm not a fan of flying ships without tank anymore, but when you have ultra long range, then you don't really need a tank because not many things can reach you. And if you see someone pop in and you are like 300 kilometers away from them, you have more than enough time to casually rotate the ship multiple times. You can do, I don't know, 20 360-degree turns, and you can still warp out and laugh at the pirate that tried to tackle your ship. So having the extra range is really nice. And I think one big issue with builds nowadays is that not not many players consider survivability as a advantage. Most players go for full DPS, maximum clear times, which, you know, it's nice. I like to watch nice DPS. I mean, don't get me wrong. I like my DPS on my ships, but DPS is not everything. Sometimes, and nowadays more than before, having a good tank is actually a lot better than having full glass build. Especially if you are running storyline missions.
We're under attack.
Tactics in the end is
We're under attack.
the most important aspect. Now, one thing that I forgot to mention, always shoot down the small things first, because small things are the greatest threat. And I also recommend that you have the PvP overview up at all times. This is something that I forgot to do, but learn from my mistakes. Always have the PvP overview up, so that if someone warps in, you will see the ship, you will see the range, and of course you can see if they are a threat. Although nowadays most actually I did ask the community to tell me their storyline mission encounter, and most said that they are jumped by mostly one ship, one hunter. Second option was 2 hunters, then third option was 3 hunters, but the third option was really small, and the fourth one was a big fleet, which was just a little bit above the third option. So most mission runners get jumped by 1 to 2 ships on average. So 1 to 2 ships should not be a big issue. And of course, if you see local going up, you can easily warp to safety if needed, or you can maintain a good orbit. Now, a lot of players forget that Eve is a 3D space, so besides going left and right, you can also go up and down. Now this messes up a lot. This messes up a lot with the pirate warping calculation, because when they warp in, most of them don't expect to see a space pen above them, like 300 kilometers above them, and in such a position there is absolutely no chance of anything getting close to. Now that doesn't mean that you should stop moving. Always keep moving in one direction, always be partially aligned or fully aligned to something. but make sure that there is no easy clear warping to the ship. Now again, since the game is 3D and you can go up or down, in some systems you will see that there is a gate basically above you, so going up is not a good idea because that would be a good warping from the gate. So always make sure that you have a safe position with no warping, and that you always have the ship moving, and that you always have that you're always basically ready for anything to happen. Now you can also use an alt. You can easily do that as well, basically using one alt in the pod and leave the alt at the gate. If someone scans, the alt will be notified, and then you know that someone is looking for fun, so you can warp out and wait out for the pirates to go away, or well, you can stay on the mission and see what kind of ship they bring to the table. Now, I wouldn't be shooting at the pirates because you would be getting the criminal timer, and if you get the criminal timer, then things might be, let's say, lethal for a space pen. A space pen in low sec with criminal timer, you can bet that a whole alliance will wake up just to get a piece of that ship. And again, I'm talking from my personal experience here, because we destroyed a couple of them, and I know how my corp responded to a space pen. Everyone was super excited. So if you're flying a exotic ship, you have to be ready for a lot of players looking to blow it up, because well, that's what this game is all about: blowing up ships and having fun. And this is probably the last wave, wave 4 out of 4. 29 ships, and I'm going to yeet the first small ships first, and then I'll go yeet the medium ones, and then at the end I will yeet the big ones. Now drones at this range are quite useless, but I keep them just in case. Nice to have drones around, can help at the cloaking stuff. You can set the orbit at 30 kilometers. And what is this? Unexpected PvP. Okay, well, let me just tackle this rock, and then I can delete the rock with the revelation. Still a little bit sick, as you might hear from my voice, but it's getting better, much better than a couple days ago. And I'm currently playing with 3 active accounts, so a little bit stressful to run around with 3 accounts while being a little bit sick, but I do a good job, I think. Space pen in the mission, revelation and alt on the gate. Well, that rock is not going to have a very good day. It's also a red one, so that means extra ISK in our pockets. The rock has an interesting nanocore, or a skin, I guess. We're about to find out that very soon. And the rock has been blown up. Beautiful. Unexpected PvP in a space pan video. Well, I haven't seen this one coming. Although it's funny, every time I start to record something like this, every single ship, you can name any ship that you want, it will come through the gate. And yeah, I have to be at 3 places at once. Let's take a look at the kill. 2.2 billion, actually a solid rock, and looks like a CTA build. This is a fleet build. Probably not really sure if there is something going on in Fountain. There probably is, but I haven't heard of anything. But yeah, that looked like a fleet fit, which is, I guess, pretty nice. And this is the last ship. How does the space pan feel in the missions? Well, it's the same as I imagined that it would be. If you're looking for a battleship that is exotic, of course, but it can give some good results in storyline missions. It's surprisingly, or ironically, relatively safe to fly, although that's a quite controversial thing to connect here, because a space pen in low sec running a storyline mission, what can be safe about that? Well, if you know what you're doing and if you maintain a safe orbit, if you don't let anyone get close to your ship, you can easily run the
Autopilot
storyline missions
engaged.
without a problem. Well then, was a very nice run with the space pen. I plan to do the same thing with some other ships, and I'm pretty sure a lot of you are interested in the space pan's main rival, which is the Typhoon 2, and I believe that's going to be the next ship that I'll be trying out. Well, with that being said, hope that you enjoyed. Stay safe, fly safe, and I'll see you next time.